Patrick O'Donnell. Welcome to your own show.
Well,
I'm
Lori
Lori.
Puma, thank you.
I am Lori Puma, and I am taking over the interview spot today. I reached out to Patrick because I have a suspicion that everything that we know about fictional policing might not be the same as it is in real life policing.
Yes, you are correct.
Yeah, so I specifically did an email series where I analyzed Allan Poe's classic short story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue. This is considered the first modern detective story, at least written in English, and it specifically is considered the first one because it established a lot of those conventions that we seen throughout classic and modern crime fiction. The brilliant sleuth, the subtle clues, the red herrings, the plot twists, and all of that stuff. And I wanted to talk to Patrick and just see, like, if any of it measures up to real life and sort of compare how things all fit together.
Sounds good.
Cool. So I'm going to ask some questions about that are going to take the events in the Poe story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, and then I'm also going to ask some questions that relate more to the conventions that the Rue Morgue established. So if you haven't read the story, you should go read it. It takes about an hour to read because there's definitely going to be some spoilers. And
Oh yeah,
I
that's yeah,
imagine
we
there
should
will
mention
be
that we
a
will
link
give a lot
in the
of
show
stuff away
notes.
here. So all right, so turn off your listening device, turn off your car, turn off your phone or whatever, go read it and then come back and listen to the rest.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Okay, so first off, um, Rue Morgue is considered the first locked room mystery. And just in case anybody's unfamiliar with that term, a locked room mystery is one where the crime looks totally impossible because the location where the crime took place appears to be completely sealed or locked. And it's not clear how the person who committed the crime could have gotten away. And this is like super popular in crime fiction, but I'm guessing that in real life this is quite rare. And I wonder if we could start there. If you ever worked on anything that approached a locked room mystery, or if you've got any stories about times when figuring out the escape route for um, the perpetrator of a crime was really pivotal.
Yeah, it's there aren't many, most crimes where I worked, especially, my mind goes towards homicides. That's the most, that's the most sensational. That's what people are most interested in. That's what, if you're gonna write a mystery book, you don't write one about a burglary, or a stolen bike or something like that. Yeah, most of the time you go for the biggest, you go for a homicide. That's the biggie. So I was thinking about this question, and my mind went to you. There are. I'll just start out with there are not a lot of mysteries like this. There aren't many mysteries really, but there aren't many mysteries like this. When it comes to homicide, just follow the money, follow the greed, follow the sex, follow the revenge, follow the anger. I'm drunk, we're playing cards. I think you cheated, and I'm gonna kill you. Yeah, it's gonna turn into a brawl. I'm gonna grab a kitchen knife. I'm gonna stab you. End of story. And I've been to plenty of those. So, or I'm gonna steal, or a robbery gone bad. Greed. Money. It's amazing the depravity that human beings can sink to. It is just shocking. But I was on field training, and field training is when you're a brand new cop, you go to patrol, and you spend 6 months in the academy doing all your cool academy stuff. Then they put you with a seasoned police officer that is a field training officer. They get paid like a buck more an hour to deal with your nonsense and show you how to do everything. And you try to get your recruit, you're still called a recruit by, the cop in the car, even though you are a full-fledged police officer and you're wearing the uniform, you got all the accoutrements. But what happens is, you're still a recruit, and there's actually a checklist of stuff they want you to experience while you're on field training. And of course, a dead body is, one of the first ones. So we got a call for a dead body, and my FTO, came over the air. My FTO was like, "Oh, we'll take that," and I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." Yeah, this was my seventh week of field training. In my first week, I was on the street for maybe 3 or 4 days, and I almost got into a fatal encounter. I almost shot and killed a guy who just killed his best friends playing cards. That's that's another story for another day. But I, yeah. But anyways, so it's like, okay, girlfriend finds boyfriend in a locked room, boom, dead. And he's got a hole in his head, in his temple. Blood and brains are coming out, and there's no gun. So we're like, "Ooh, this is interesting." And there's no forced entry. And she says when she got there, she had to unlock his door. She had a key. It was kind of like a rooming house, it's student housing. It was like an
Hmm.
old house that they converted a bunch of rooms, they probably charge an outlandish amount of money for these poor kids, et cetera, et cetera. And, he just had this small little bedroom, and she said the door was locked. She was hysterical. And I don't think she was putting on an act, but, the fire department was there. That's regular SOP. It's like, okay, the fire department's going to get there. Uh, he was rigor mortis was already set in. He had been dead for a while, so they're not going to attempt life saving anything when you're obviously dead. I think the criteria is decapitation, rigor mortis, lividity, etc., or decomposition. You're not going to start doing CPR on somebody like that. But what happened was, I'm the new guy, and everyone's like, "Ooh, there's a recruit here." Even the fire chief was just like, "Oh, there's a recruit here. Get him up front. Get him up front. He's need to see all these brains on the pillow." And I'm like, "Okay." So we're looking, and it's like, "Yeah, he's way dead." And there's an entrance wound right to his temple, a little bit of burn, which would indicate that the end of the barrel was very close to his temple. There was a little bit of burn, and it's like, "Ooh, okay." But, the windows were closed. He was on a second or third story, so unless it was Spider-Man, going up the side, window doesn't really mean a whole lot. And the door was locked, according to her. So we have a locked door mystery. So, the first thing you think is like, okay, maybe he committed suicide. All right. There's no notes. There's no whatever. Again, his girlfriend is hysterical. She is the caller, and the caller is the golden ticket for any homicide. You always want to sequester that person and do a good interview on them. So what happens initially is a police officer will take that person, put them in their car, run them for warrants, see what kind of criminal background they have, et cetera, et cetera. If they're armed, I've had all kinds of kooky stuff happen. So, a copper has this woman in his car, and she's probably like, I don't know, 23, 24 years old, and he's about the same. And like I said, she's hysterical. I don't think she's putting on an act. Some of the cops thought she was, some of the cops thought she wasn't. The fire chief thought she was putting on an act. Everyone is putting in their 2 cents. It's hilarious. It's like, then, the sergeant's there and he's like, she did it. She did it. I know she did it. And I'm just like, all right. Because guns just don't walk away, right? And especially with the locked door. Now, out on the street, if somebody kills himself, or whatever, if there's a gun on the street, it will last 3 seconds in the specific neighborhoods. It'll be gone. Poof. Just we would call it like poof, it's gone. A lot of times when we're chasing cars, in the middle of the night, you'd see whoever toss the gun out the window that they had because they didn't want to be caught with a gun. And we would have, like cops go look for it. 99% of the time that gun is gone.
Can
Somebody's
I bring you back to
sure.
the this lady? I'm kind curious, sort of what happened. Like you were the new recruit. Like, did you sit in on the interview,
Oh yeah,
or
absolutely. And they
how did
want you to
that all
experience everything. And
play out?
the initial interview of the woman was, it's like back up a little bit. Okay, it's like you came here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Where were you? Well, I was at work. I worked at a coffee shop this morning. What time did you get up? You ask very, very specific questions because it's hard to lie. It really is. People don't understand that some people are good at it, don't get me wrong, but like take me through like your last 24 hours. And of course, when was the last time you talked to your boyfriend? What did he say? And she's like, I talked to him last night. He was upset. He got kicked out of school. He had really bad grades. He didn't have a job. He couldn't pay his rent. He was kind of spiraling downwards, and he was also yeah, he had a bad drinking problem too. So it was just a variety of things. And she, you know, you ask it, and it's like, has he ever talked about killing himself? And she said, yeah, he has. And it's like, okay, did he ever, like try to get any help for that? Or, obviously he's depressed. Did he ever seek any kind of help? Or, is there any like parents maybe that are helping him out or friends? And she's like, he has no friends and he's estranged from his family. And I'm like, oof, that's rough. So, then the homicide detectives come in, and then the medical examiner's investigator will come in, and we're all like piled in this little room. Obviously, you don't do this interview with the woman in this room. You remove her from that situation immediately. Only like CSI and cops and that kind of thing. You want to make because if I got a dead body and a hole in the head, I'm presuming this is a homicide until it's proven otherwise. It's like, okay.
Mhm.
So now you're getting all of this evidence and you from this woman, and she seems fairly credible. She'd never been arrested. He'd never been arrested. They're just normal people, that doing their thing. And she was a student as well. They met in school. And we're like, okay, and we're trying to figure stuff out. And it's like, well, most of the time when a gun is fired, especially if it's a semi-automatic pistol, the casing gets ejected off from the side of the gun. Now this is a small room, so it could bounce like all over the place. So me being the new guy, I'm on my hands and knees with my flashlight, and I found the casing under the bed. And I'm like, ooh, look what I found. It's like, hmm, that's interesting. So it's like, okay, so you just put a piece of paper. We have these little yellow, we call them FI cards, field interview cards. There's probably the size of like a flash card, maybe a little bit smaller. You make a little tent and you just put it next to the evidence. And it's like, all right, so now we got some physical evidence. That's cool. And you can't touch the body until the medical examiner gets there. The police, the detectives, we're in charge of the scene. It's our scene. We own it. But we don't own the body. The medical examiner has full responsibility of the body itself. So they come in, they do kind of their own investigation as well. So, and we always work in harmony. I mean, if you're in a city where you get a lot of dead bodies, you get to know each other very well. It's like, hey, there's Jen Penn. I love Jen. It's like, oh, cool. We've got a really good, investigator from the ME's office. So we're all looking at each other, and it's like, suicide, homicide. Again, locked door. So the way this one was solved, I'll fast forward, was finally the ME got there, and they're treating it as a homicide. They're like, okay, we're getting ready to arrest her. And it's like, oh, okay. So they move the body because you always move the body to see what's underneath it. The ME's there, and by then CSI is there, and they take a gajillion pictures from every angle you can think of, and they want to see what's under the body as well because you never know. Well, they roll the body over. There's the gun, and
Oh,
there
wow.
wasn't a handle or a barrel sticking out, nothing like that. It was it was just weird because bodies, it's not like what you see on TV or in the movies. When you get shot, you don't fly backwards 100 feet, or whatever. The body crumbles. That's the best way to describe it. And this guy crumbled on top of his gun. So I mean, that's what like. And everyone had that aha moment. It's like, oh, okay. That still doesn't preclude you from doing a full investigation, but it definitely, you're steering the ship in a different direction now. You always,
'Cause
always follow the evidence. And that's the way it
after
works.
you saw the gun, I'm guessing that made suicide much more likely.
Yes, yes. That really, yeah, then, examining the entrance wound. There wasn't an exit wound. There always isn't an exit. I've seen it both ways. And when you do a real good examination of that wound, like I said before, if there's powder burns and like burn marks, that means that barrel was like right there. And most of the time, I mean, yeah, it could happen that way with a homicide, but most of the time it's from somewhat of a distance. Even if that distance is like a couple feet, because most homicides are up close and personal, but that's the way that works. So we went from a homicide investigation to more of a suicide investigation, but it was still homicide investigators that were doing the investigation because you don't want to be wrong. Obviously you got to be 100% right with this stuff.
Yeah. Wow, that had to be quite um the entrance into policing,
Oh
you
yeah,
know.
like I said, I had already been involved in probably three or four homicides before that, or maybe more. I don't know. But yeah, that was. But usually there were street homicides, gang stuff. You're selling dope on my corner. I'm gonna kill you. Or this was during the crack wars. This is '95, and if you sold somebody a piece of drywall instead of crack cocaine, you'll get a bullet in your head or a piece of ivory soap. I've seen both.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
There's that's yes, many things.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Yeah. So that is a really um gives us a lot of information about how an investigation works when you've got a single person that makes a call. In Rue Morgue, it's a group of neighbors who discover the bodies of victims, and I was curious how common it is to arrive at a crime scene where there's a large group of people already there and you have to kind of sort through
Boy, those are the nightmare
what's
scenes.
happening.
Oh, boy, that's just no fun at all. I mean, I've got a humorous one and a not so humorous story for you. So, the not so humorous one was I got called to a tavern shooting. Imagine a bar packed with people. I get there, it's 2 o'clock in the morning in a not so nice part of town, and people are literally just running. It's like a wave of people running out the front door. And there's a guy on in the street. I almost ran over him by accident, who had a bullet right between his eyes. He was shot right between the eyes and a couple of times in the body. He was shot in the bar and then staggered to the street and died in the street.
How what do you do when you
And I was by
arrive
myself. I
at
was
such
Yeah, and I
such a
was
scene with so much happening? Like, can you take us through the steps of like
yeah,
what did you think about like, okay, I got to do this first, second,
the
etc.
the first thing on my mind was I need help. I need backup. So usually they sent me and another one-man car to this shooting. And I was like maybe a couple blocks away when it occurred. So I was there within half a minute. And like I said, I almost run over the victim. And then there's the sea of humanity running out. And I'm just like, I just get on the air right away. First off, my gun is out. And I'm like, okay, is the shooter still here? Am I going to get shot? I can't turn my back. So there's 100 different things running through your mind. So the first thing is scene safety. Okay, I'll be more safe with more cops. And obviously if we have a chance to catch the bad guy, that's what we're going to do, but also render aid to this victim. He was obviously dead to me. His eyes were open. I've seen that look a bunch of times, and by the holes in him and all that, I knew he had passed. But we are still required to render aid, but I'm not going to turn my back. You have to make decisions. It's like, I'm sorry, dude, but I'm not going to get shot in the back while I'm giving you CPR. That's not happening today. So again, it's scene safety. You try to get as many people there as possible and try to preserve the crime scene as best you can.
How do you do that when there's so many people around?
The way I can't stop, there's probably a little over 100 people inside that bar. So I can't stop 100 people. One person can't do it. So the biggest, most important piece of evidence is the body. So I'm going to preserve that as best as possible. Yeah, I was surprised that I didn't have like a loved one or somebody like screaming and hugging him, and I've seen that, and nobody wanted to claim any kind of ownership to him. And what happened was another cop arrived. We started putting up yellow tape. We tried to find the caller, and we found the caller, believe it or not. So yeah, she was our golden ticket. I'm like, you're gonna have a seat in this car. You know, the bartender usually sticks around. Again, he's gonna be a really good witness.
So is the caller like the first person that you look for after you find the victim? I'm just
Yes.
curious about the
Hmm.
steps.
Absolutely. You're gonna
And
want
then
to.
you put them away from the scene.
Correct. Correct. So as soon as there's enough cops there, you secure the scene. Nobody in, nobody out. So if there's anybody in there, you ain't leaving. Not until we talk to you and find out your story, etc. Bartender, okay, it's like, okay, we're going to secure you because, you it's a very high probability that it's a neighborhood bar. You know who this guy is that's laying on the ground. And B, you probably saw or heard or something of value to us. If not, you saw the whole incident. So at first he was very uncooperative. And then how can I say, we persuaded him with,
What kind of things happen? Like, what does not cooperating mean? I'm kind of
just
curious if you
not
could
talking to
share.
you or F you, fill in
Mm.
the colorful language, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I got a dead body out in the street. It happened in your bar on your watch. Guess what? You're responsible. We could do this here. I'll just arrest you right now for obstruction of justice. It's really simple.
Ah, so the
You know,
persuasion was we could do this here, we could do this down at the
yeah. Or
station
you
kind
could
of a
go in,
thing.
Hank. Would you prefer to sit in a squad car while we interview you and you'll be on your merry way later on? Or I'll put you in bracelets and you'll spend the night in jail. It's up to you. And I'll keep the front door open. I don't care. It's not my business.
That
It's
sounds like it would be very persuasive to someone who owns a business.
Yes. So again, scene safety is number one. You want to make sure you're safe. You want to make sure everybody else is safe. Number two, rendering aid to the victim if possible. So yeah, I had the fire department there within minutes, but they staged like a block away. And then you got up on the air and you confirmed it's like, yeah, I have one subject, he's P and B, yada yada. And P and B is pulseless non breathing. So you let the dispatcher know, and then for something like that, a sergeant is required to go. So your boss is going to be coming to that scene. And again, like I said, more cops depending on how many people. I mean, by the time we had this thing locked down, you had the bartender, the victim, and just maybe a couple of witnesses that stuck around. That's it. And then they go from there.
And what is th that? So, like, I guess I'm kind of curious, like, what the so you've interviewed the person that called, you've interviewed the bartender. Like, were those things that you were in on, or did that get handed off to detectives? I'm just curious how all of that kind
In
of works and what
initially,
the
initially it's the police officers on the scene that do the very, bare bones interview. It's not an interrogation, it's an interview. So you're not reading people's rights. You're not, you don't have to give Miranda because you're not, that person is not under arrest, yet. But yeah, the police officer is going to do the initial, it's like who you are, what were you doing there? Did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Et cetera, et cetera. And then the police officer is going to run them to see if they got any warrants, what kind of criminal history they have, if they're with a gang, who are they affiliated with, et cetera, et cetera.
and
And
that's all in like the databases
yeah,
that you have access
absolutely.
to in your car.
You betcha. And then homicide detectives are going to make it out there. CSI people are going to make it out there. And, bosses are going to be there. Lots of yellow tape. And again, nobody in, nobody out. And then the detectives will do lengthy interviews with the subjects, either on scene or they might take them downtown and do a recorded interview, both video and audio, especially if they think they may have had something to do with it. Because again, there's nothing better. It's hard to lie. So if you're on a video recording, with video and audio, you're saying one thing that night, and then a week later we bring you in for another interview, and you're saying a whole lot different. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean you're lying, but because your ideas of what happened can get distorted. It's chaotic, it's very traumatic, etc. So we expect a little bit of variance, but when you're like way off, it's like, well, you're a bad liar. It's like, okay, you know,
Yeah.
that's the way that goes.
So you said that you arrived at this scene at 2 a.m. I'm just
Mhm.
curious, like, what did you leave and was stuff still happening? Like, what sort of was the end of your involvement with this?
I'm trying to remember. It was a long time ago. So I was the first one to arrive. All that stuff that I just said occurs. We lock down the scene, and I think I stuck with the body towards the end. And the medical examiner's investigator comes out there. They do their thing. CSI has, like, again, they take a gajillion pictures. They found a bunch of casings inside the bar, bullet casings. So there's physical evidence, lots of pictures. They're going to take blood. There's lots of blood. Just in case the bad guy got hurt, they're going to take that blood too, etc. And until the medical examiner takes the body away, then we can break down the crime scene. And the CSI people are done doing what they're doing. So that was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was probably there till about 7 or 8 in the morning, somewhere
And
in
was
that time.
that the time that the crime scene
Yeah,
was
yeah,
taken away?
yes. I was one of the last ones to leave. I do remember that.
Cool. And so I'm curious if by the time you got to taking it down, you had a good idea of what what had occurred.
Not really. I knew he was shot inside. Then we identified the person, the victim, and he only lived like a block away. So he was trying to make it home, but he just
Mhm.
expired in the street. So I knew who it was, and then they gave a pretty good description. Well, they gave a name of the guy that shot him. It was, of course, over a girl. Just stupid stuff. Somebody bumped into the girl wrong or whatever. I've been to more than one homicide like that.
Oh, people.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. Do you have any, this wasn't on my question list,
Sure.
but I was just curious, like, how do you keep your own spirits up when faced with all of this terrible?
Um, it's it depends on the situation. Something like things that are like really faux pas are anything dealing with children and babies or like older people, vulnerable people. That's just ugh, that just sticks in your craw. But a lot of other things, there's gallow humor, and everybody's
Mm.
got it that's on the scene. It's the cops, the firefighters, even the ME investigators are hilarious. We're around it so much. It's I remember, yeah, so I'll take you back to it's like, okay, I've got this mob of people. This guy is freshly killed. I've got my gun out. I'm wondering if this guy is going to come, shooting at me, running out of the bar. It's very, very tense. And my backup comes, and this cop, I'll just say he was a little goofy. He was a little different. And he runs to his squad car to the med kit, and he puts a piece of gauze on this guy's forehead. I'm like, dude, there's a crater there. That's not going to save him. He's dead. I said, we have to clear this bar. And he's like, dude, I took a 3-day rap, which is a 3-day suspension for not rendering aid. He said, "Look, I just rendered aid," and we both started laughing in the
Oh my
midst of
goodness.
all of this like craziness. We're both laughing our butts off. We're like, "Oh my God, really?" All
Yeah.
right, okay, now we'll go do our job. But that's how you do it. For me, it was I've been a gym rat forever, and that kept me sane. Just a good workout could really do wonders for you. And that's the way I
Yeah.
looked at it. Now, we would have choir practices every now and then, and a choir practice is going to a bar and having drinks and kind of decompressing that way. That's very common with first responders, especially first responders who are like in the thick of things where like every day you're in a shooting or a homicide or whatever. That's kind of your therapy is to be around other cops, and that could be good and it can be bad as well.
Yeah. You said that you had a humorous story um about arriving at a at a scene where there were many people.
Oh gosh. Oh boy. I was so stuck with this one. I forgot the other one. And this is where there's like a lot of people and you're trying to oh boy, which one was that? It'll come to me later. I'm sorry. I
Okay,
totally
well, we
forgot
can
it.
come back to that one. Let
Okay.
me type a note to myself. It's the beauty of editing, right?
Yes, you got that right.
About maybe okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about interviewing, and I was curious, if we could talk a little bit more about about the interviews that you did. Like in the Poe story, we just get the results of police interviews through newspaper articles, so we get a summary of what the investigators learned, but not the full dialogue between the officer and whoever they're interviewing. And you've kind of said a little bit about how you approach interviews when you're first on the scene, but I was curious if you could kind of walk us through, you know, from start to finish, and if it's like obviously the person that calls is like the most important person, but then I'm curious if you do the same questions with, other people that are around or um
You
yeah, if you
start
could just take us through.
I guess, I'm going to talk, differently with somebody who is a witness to something. I'm going to be as friendly as possible. I'm still going to get all of your information. You start with the basic stuff: who you are, date of birth, where do you live, do you work, do you go to school, where do you do any of those things? You know, basic stuff. So, in case if you have to find them later, you have somewhere to go. Because somebody that might seem inconsequential can be of some value actually later on through your investigation. You might find, oh geez, Lori does know a little more than what she's saying. And it's like, I'm gonna go visit, I'm gonna call her, she's not answering, okay, I'm gonna go to her house, I'm gonna go where she works, I'm gonna, whatever, depending on the seriousness of the situation. So obviously, I'm going to talk to you a little bit differently. I'm going to, be as friendly as possible. Obviously show some empathy. Especially if you just witnessed something horrific, et cetera. And if it's, like a loved one, then yeah, those are tough. Those are really, really tough. So you try to be as
So
under.
if you were interviewing a loved one, like how would you, I guess I'm just sort of like, okay, you've got to empathize with this person and you've got to get information out of them. I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit more about
A
how
lot
you
of that is
try to do
building
that.
a lot of that is building rapport, and nobody acts exactly the same at whatever scene, and every scene is different. It's like I remember I had a suicide. It was especially gory, where this husband and wife had a fight. They've been married for like over 20 years. They had a fight. They slept in separate bedrooms. She woke up in the morning and she noticed he was gone, and she heard a loud bang in the garage. Well, he shot himself with a shotgun to the head. Not much of that head was like there anymore. It was really bad. And I remember it was a beautiful summer day, and we needed to know all this information. And she was shaking like a leaf, and she knew what happened. I mean, and I sat outside with her on her like patio for way over an hour, just talking to her. And I said, whatever happened, it's not your fault. This isn't something that just happened. It's not because you said X, Y, or Z. Just trying to show as much empathy as possible, to be compassionate. I mean, I held her hand for over an hour. I was the only person in the world for her. So I'm going to treat that person a lot differently than the person who just killed somebody. Or I just ran, half a block or a block running after this guy, hopefully catching him after they just committed a crime. But the whole thing is building rapport. Even with this, I'll give you another story where,
Well, Kim, before we move on,
sure,
I was just curious, like, okay, so what is the information that you're like, okay, I'm not leaving until I got this, or
e-
is there a set of information that makes you
everything
think
is
that?
situational, and I'm not a detective and I don't play one on TV, but yeah, I was a boss, and there were certain situations where a sergeant wouldn't, where a detective would not come out to the scene. Now, if it's a homicide, you're gonna have a homicide detective come out. You lay the groundwork for that detective. You don't
And what
want
does
an
that entail? Like
you don't
the groundwork. What do you need to hand off
you
to
know what?
them?
Okay, you're gonna be if it's very, very obvious this person is under arrest. He's in handcuffs, he's in the back of the squad car. But you know what? It's like, all right, what kind of music do you want to listen to, dude? What do you mean? Yeah. What do you like? I'm gonna listen to this. Is this okay? Sure. Hey, what's your name again? What's your date of birth? You know, while I'm asking all this, I'm also running him on a computer. See, okay, is he on probation or parole? Has he done this stuff before? 99% of the time, yes. What kind of criminal history? A long one. You know, th- but you need to know all this stuff. Does he have any warrants? Okay, so for now, you're under arrest for the 3 warrants you got. You got to take care of some old business. Oh, okay. And you just try to take it down a bunch of notches. So by the time that detective would get there, it wouldn't be this agitated, like, asshole guy that just wants to, fight, 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 fight. But there are caveats to that. If you're intoxicated, you can't interview somebody. Legally, you can't do an interrogation, like a Mirandized interrogation of somebody who's under the influence of drugs or alcohol.
I did not know that,
Yep.
but that
So,
makes sense.
yes. So if somebody is just drunk off their butt, or say, yeah, I just got done smoking a whole bunch of crack, or man, I smoked a lot of weed tonight, and it's like, all right, it's going to be at least 12 hours before you talk to one of us. You're going to go
So
to jail, and then later on, you get interrogated.
I'm curious about like, so the story that you told me before was about the bar, and I'm like, so does that mean that if people have had anything to drink,
Well,
you
it's
can't
different.
interview them?
No,
Or if they're,
you can interview people, but interrogation is different.
ah, okay. It's when you switch from being, I'm just here gathering basic facts so that
Exactly.
I can run you through my system is different than if you're like, what exactly happened here? You told me X and now you're saying Y.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And the ultimate home run for any investigation is for the person to give a full confession and have them thank you at the end, which is a wonderful thing. And the way you do that is, it's like, you know what? I know you really didn't mean that. Lori, you know what? You were upset. This guy did X, Y, and Z to you. He's kind of an asshole. I understand that. I get it. And things happen. And it's like, yeah, and I know you feel bad for his family. What do you think about you writing an apology for me to the family? Could you do that for me?
Did people actually do that?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. I
What
didn't know that either.
what's an
Oh,
apology? An apology is a confession.
Oh, that is tricky.
Oh yeah. And other really good ways of interrogation that are fairly successful are, like what I just said, but that's not going to work. It's all situational. You build that rapport with the person. I'll back to like if you were under arrest for whatever, I'm going to be questioning you or doing the interrogation. For me, it was stolen cars. I loved chases. When I was a newer cop, I was in a chase almost every night. We're going after stolen
Oh my
cars.
goodness.
And if you're going after a stolen car, usually, this guy's got warrants. There's guns in the car. There's drugs in the car. There's all kinds of cool stuff. And I had a great percentage going. And the way I had to do it, and detectives never came out for any of that kind of stuff. So the way I would do it is I would be as non-confrontational as possible. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, that car that you stole, you probably didn't steal it. You probably got it from somebody else, right? Yeah, I know it was stolen. Of course you did. There's no keys. You're using a screwdriver. Most people don't use screwdrivers to start their cars. Pretty simple. Or, there's this brand new, Audi. Most people in this neighborhood could barely afford to eat. And this is a $50,000 car. So I'm not stupid. You have no job, you have no money, and you're driving around in this car. And you, we just went driving for about, 5 minutes, going over 100 miles an hour before you cracked up. So,
So when you would, so when you would, um, how did you get them to stop in the first place? I think that's my first question.
uh, a lot of times they end in crashes. And
Mm,
surprisingly enough, and very rarely do they ever get hurt. A lot of times they're running out the door before the car is even stopped all the way. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah,
okay, so then you chase them down, stop them, put them in cuffs,
yep.
and then interview them with the like, oh, this definitely wasn't stolen. It's a total accident kind of a deal.
Yeah, like an hour later, 2 hours later after they get processed, a lot of times they didn't even realize I was the one putting handcuffs on them. They thought I was just like another cop. And that was funny. So,
So
what you do,
they
what you
you g caught them with and handcuffed them, got them in a squad
take them
car,
to
took them
jail.
to the station,
Yeah. Yeah, you
and
take them to the
then you
state.
interviewed them with this style.
Correct.
Okay, I was just trying
Correct.
to figure out where
Yeah,
everything
that's
happened because
right. Yep.
these are such great details.
Yep. Then, you interview them or interrogate them. Different departments have different ways of saying it. We called it QPing somebody. That's because the
QP,
for
what does that stand
question
for?
prisoner. That was,
Ah,
it's just, it was our culture because that was like the name of the form, the QP form, question prisoner. So it's like, hey, did you QP Lori? Yeah, I'll get to it. Yeah, whatever. But the number one thing when it comes to any kind of interrogation or QP or whatever you want to call it is building that rapport. The thing, and I know that's in some of your notes here, but my biggest pet peeve is where somebody's interrogating somebody and they start out with, "I know you killed him, Lori. I'm just screaming my ass off at you, blah 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 blah." No. All
yes.
right, Lori, here we are. Do you know why you're here today? It's, well, okay, all right. Well, we got some stuff to talk about. But first, you know, let's get some information about you. Is this your full name? Okay, do you have a middle name? What's your date of birth? Where do you live? Mom and dad, are they alive? Blah, blah, blah. Where did you go to? And then another thing you have to consider too is, okay, how far did you go in school? Can you read and write? These are things we have to ask because the defense attorney is going to say, this guy didn't even go to high school. He barely knows how to read and write. And, you're showing him this Miranda form. He doesn't even know what it is. Do you read and write English? Just really, like basic stuff. And then we'll also ask is like, have you had any street drugs or alcohol within the last 24 hours? If so, how much and what? So you, it's just a conversation and you just start building up this rapport. Oh, you're from here? Yeah, you know what? I grew up over there. It's like, yeah, you know what? Or, yeah, I really like that restaurant in that corner. It's so good. You know, so you take their mind off of it actually, if you can, for a little while. And then you circle back and it's like, hey, Lori, before we go any further, there's these questions I have to ask you. And every cop and every detective would have this little, it's like almost a little bit bigger than a business card or the size of a business card. And it would have the Miranda questions on there. You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that? Okay. And you just go one by one. Some departments have the person follow along with a sheet of paper and initial next to each one. So they know exactly. So you don't start out with Miranda. If you start out with Miranda right away, that's more or less, I don't want a confession from this guy. Because right away they get defensive.
Yeah.
It's you're the asshole cop or detective instead of, yeah, you're just this person and you're having a conversation and let's see where it leads. So that's the way that works. And also the the prisoner that has the most to lose or has been through the system a lot, most of the time will just lawyer up. They'll just be like, I want my lawyer. And again, in movies and TV, they keep talking. And I'm like, no, you can't keep talking. It's over. It's done. Cancel Christmas. You're back in your jail cell. We're done here. We're just going to keep going, with whatever part of the investigation we're going to do. You're going down on the county jail. I'm not talking to you anymore. You wanted a
So
lawyer.
for your stolen car cases, like are you the person that follows through on those
Yep,
um and
absolutely.
continues interviewing them with the lawyer present at
No,
some later time?
whenever they would lawyer up, they wouldn't see their lawyer till like the next day. Unless you have a whole lot of money and you got a lawyer on speed dial that's on retainer. And most of these people were public defenders. They're not going to come at 2 o'clock in the morning to sit next to their client while you question them. You know, it, I had an amusing thing one time. I was at a prelim. We have preliminary hearings in the state of
Mhm.
Wisconsin, and that's to determine if there's probable cause to arrest. That's one of the first hearings
And
that you
that
have.
happens before the person
Uh,
is
no, no, no.
arrested?
No, the person gets arrested, they get processed, they can get bail. In some places, there is no
Ah,
bail anymore. They're just like catch and release, depending on the severity of the crime. So even though it's a felony, say this person stole a car, he'd be out. They might give him a signature bond, which means sign this piece of paper and promise you show up for your next hearing, that kind of thing. So probable cause hearing, you hear it sometimes, like in New York, it's called a grand jury. Here we call it a preliminary hearing. So this happens about a week after the arrest, somewhere in that ballpark. And it's not even a judge, it's usually a magistrate or a court commissioner. And it's just to see, did you have probable cause to arrest this person? Most of the
so
time,
basically, did you as the officer do things correctly?
yeah, did I have probable cause? Probable cause is the quantum of evidence that would lead a reasonable police officer to believe that you committed that crime. So you probably committed that crime. So like with almost 100% of auto thefts, it was super easy because you're driving a stolen car and I catch you. I mean, it doesn't get more simple than that. And so 9 out of 10 times the person's going to waive they can, the suspect or prisoner or whoever you want to call them, they can waive their right to this preliminary hearing. And most people do because a lot of times the probable cause for arrest is not in question. Uh, What does come down later on would be a motions hearing, a motion to suppress evidence, but not the arrest itself. So
Okay.
I'll
So
just tell
is
you,
that the point at which like the lawyers take over?
well, lawyers don't take over; they represent their client. And I
Well,
mean,
I was more I think I misspoke. I was like um at some point I'm guessing that you are going to hand things to an attorney, a
yeah,
district attorney.
yes, a prosecutor, a DA, is the person who's going to prosecute this, and that happens after. Well, it happens right away. Say, okay, I arrest somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning. At sometime that day, like during the day, they work day shift hours. They're going to review that case. Either I'm going to present it to them, they're going to look at all my paperwork, or we had liaisons because we had so many people getting arrested. It wasn't practical for these officers to go down for every arrest. So we had officers that was their full-time job was to present cases to the DA.
Wow. That's a
So
lot of
Oh
That's a
yeah.
lot of people being arrested.
Oh yeah. So the DA, decides what they're gonna charge this person with, if they're gonna charge it at all. And that all, happens after the preliminary hearing as far as the DA is not involved in the prelim. It's the officer detective that did the arresting. And just real quick story, I'm sitting in this prelim and it was for, and just to make things clear, yeah, you're driving a stolen car. 9 out of 10 times you won't get charged with auto theft. You'll get charged with a lesser crime of operating a stolen vehicle, operating a vehicle without owner's consent. It's still a felony. It's like just one tier below the actual auto theft felony. So I'm sitting down. There's a defense attorney I've never met before sitting next to me. The courtroom's packed. And she's going through these reports and she's like mumbling to herself. She's like, what a dumbass. I can't believe how stupid this guy is. And I look and it was my case. And I'm like, oh my God, this is hilarious. And she says,
So
I
that
look,
was the magistrate saying
no,
that,
no,
or
it was the
the
defense
attorney?
attorney.
The
So this
defense
guy's
attorney.
defense attorney. And she's looking and she's looking and she's like, I can't do anything with this. She said, this guy's so stupid. He gave him everything. I said, well, he's really good. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, look at the nameplate. And she's like, oh my God, you were the arresting officer. I'm like, yes, I was. And I did the QP. And she's like, well, good job. But she's like, he didn't show up today, so there's gonna be a bench warrant out for him anyway, so it doesn't matter. He's a dumbass. And I'm like, okay, good
Oh
enough.
wow. Wow. You've given such awesome stories. And I don't know what your timing is for the rest of the day. We've been talking for about an hour.
Yeah, we got
Um
about 10 more minutes, 10, 15 minutes. We're
okay.
good. We're good still.
Okay. So I had questions about lies.
Okay.
And you said it's really hard to lie, but I'm guessing that that probably doesn't stop people from trying.
Oh, everybody
As
does. And the way to catch a liar, there's a whole industry where people read micro expressions of
Mhm.
people, body language. And there's micro expressions, and you can. There was a TV show. It was called, I think, Tell Me Lies. It was really. I thought it was good. I enjoyed that, but it isn't practical. I mean, we don't have time to like freeze frame, these for an interrogation. It was like, hold that thought. I'm going to analyze this for 10 hours. It was like, no, that's not going to happen. But you can kind of tell, when somebody is lying to you to a point. And one good way, if you're doing an interview, is like, you know what, Lori, take me through your last 24 hours, but let's do it in reverse. And then I'm going to
that's
have you
a
do it forward.
trick
And
to help people remember things as well.
yeah,
I learned that in public health school.
yes, it's very difficult for people to lie backwards, going in reverse. It's really
Fascinating. Was there like I mean, I'm guessing the most common lie was probably, I didn't do it. Um, but I'm wondering if there were any like particularly strange ones or any ones that kind of stick out in your memory.
not really. It all melds into one. It gets silly. It's like, well, I wasn't here, and I'm like, but here's the thing when it comes to lies, especially when you're in an interrogation room, etc. Let them just keep going. If they're talking, let them talk. Let them go, go, go. Give them lots of rope. And then when it's an opportune time and they're kind of relaxed, they're like, whew, I I think I did a pretty good job with this of all these lies. Then that's when you're like, what if I told you, Lori, I've got video of you at this scene doing X, Y, or Z? What do you think? Then they're gonna look like, uh, or what if I told you, your neighbor said they saw you doing, X, Y, and Z at this time when you said you weren't even in the state, you were visiting your mother in Chicago. Yeah, so it's like, yeah. So you just start presenting them with all that. You don't get real far when you're interrogating somebody who says, "You're a liar, Lori. You are such a liar."
Mhm.
Well, the Dukes are going to come up. They're going to get defensive. it doesn't do anybody any good. Is there a place for that? Yes, there is. Once you have like all your ducks in a row and you've pretty much discredited them as much as possible and pointed out like physical evidence or whatever. And also remember, per the Supreme Court, police can be deceitful when it comes to interrogations. So what I could say to
Was
you,
that something that you ever did?
oh yeah, absolutely. And this
Do
is
you
way,
have an example for us
yeah,
of how that
this
works?
is this is the way I would work. Remember before I said, you know what? What if I told you there's video of you stealing this car, or there's video of you actually killing this person? What if I told you that, even though it doesn't
Oh,
exist?
you can do that.
Oh,
Oh wow.
absolutely.
I had heard that but didn't quite understand
But
exactly how it would be used. So, yeah, that could be very
you know,
useful.
what if I told you your fingerprints were on the gun that killed, Joe Smo? What about that? Then it would be like, eyebrows go up. It was like, oh, oh boy, I thought I wiped those down right. Yeah, that's you can see the wheels spinning. Yeah,
hmm
but the caveat to
Is
that,
that something that you would do if you weren't sure, or do you?
it depends how the
uh,
interview is going. If it's flowing and things are going great, there's no reason to do that.
mhm.
But it's just one tool in your tool bag to use if things aren't going so great and you're maybe at a stalemate or things are just not progressing like you hope they would. So the way another way to look at it is, and this is a caveat, is yes, I can say, what if I told you that your fingerprints are on the murder weapon, Lori? All right. Or,
I'll be sweating.
yeah, yeah. And remember,
My fingers will be trembling.
and remember, this video could be played in court. So you don't want to get too outlandish. And it's like, I have this video right here, where I have 10 witnesses that, say that you killed him at this bar at this time, blah, blah, blah. So there's a certain line that you don't want to cross where you don't want to get ridiculous with this stuff. You kind of want to keep it vague.
So, what would be an example of something that would be ridiculous?
Well, you know what? We have 10 witnesses in this bar that said they saw you kill him, even though I don't have any witnesses.
Oh, okay. So it's just a matter of uh how it compares
Yeah.
to what you have actually got. So
And
it
when
it needs to be close to the truth. Is
correct.
that
Yeah,
accurate? Okay.
yes, you can't be outlandish. You can't be so crazy, it's like there were Martians here and they did, it's like no, it's like no, 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 no. You want to steer them in a certain direction, but you don't want it to be outlandish. That's a great word for it. It's because you there's always the possibility, and it's a good possibility, that the jury is going to see this, the defense attorney is going to see this. you know that's another thing with movies and TV, etc. It's like at the last minute somebody come running in with this piece of evidence. It's like, aha, he is guilty because of, no, we all, it's called discovery, and we're required to give all the same police report that I would give the DA. I would also have a copy for the defense attorney. So
Yes.
there are no big surprises. There are no shocking revelations. Usually when you're at a trial like that.
Well, maybe we could do one more question, and
Sure,
because I'd love
absolutely.
to ask you about, like, okay, so pretty much all crime fiction has some clues that like twist the plot because they've been taken out of context or somehow misinterpreted. In Rue Morgue, there's one of them is the unusual size of the marks on the victim's necks is is one of those plot twisting clues. And I'm just curious. I'm guessing that in real life this is something that is very rare, but I'm curious if you ever encountered anything where something was misinterpreted.
There can be misinterpretations. I mean, I remember I was with my partner and we got called to a shooting at a drug house. And a drug house is a place that's actively, like selling drugs. They're smoking dope. They're smoking crack. They're, whatever. They're not nice places, usually in really horrible neighborhoods. And we get a call for a shooting inside. It's like, okay, we get there, doors are locked. Great. So door goes down. We boot it. There's a guy on the ground. So we go in through the front door. There's a guy on the ground, probably about 15 yards away, maybe 20. In the living room was a clear, you could see clear straight through. On the ground, his shirt was off. He had three holes in his chest, and one eye was open, one eye was closed. His tongue was sticking out, and there was a pistol within hand's reach. He was on the ground. He was very dead. And it's like, okay. And it's like, hmm. And we started looking, and okay, we've got the dead guy here. And when you close the door, well, actually, the wall next to the door had three or four fresh holes where you could see he was shooting. And then whoever shot him was either still in the house or, had already fled. It's like, okay. So this is a different partner. It's like he's gloving up, he's going to do CPR. And I'm like, no, dude, we haven't cleared this house yet. The guy who just killed this dude may still be here. And again, I'm not going to get shot in the back while we're playing firefighter or paramedic here. That's not going to happen. So we got into a fight, and he gets over the air and he said, well, this is a suicide. I'm like, he shot himself three times in the chest, dude. Really? He's got three holes in his chest. That's kind of hard to do. Is it possible? Anything's possible. Is it probable? Hell no. So, yeah, we're fighting between the two of us. It's like, dude, no, yes, no, yes, no. And I'm like, oh,
Is that common to have that kind of disagreement?
not always. Yeah, he came from a different district that wasn't as busy. He hadn't had
Ah,
the
so he didn't have
experience with,
as much experience as
correct,
you did in these kind of dangerous situations.
correct. So, to make a long story short, it was a drug transaction gone bad, turned into a gun battle, and the guy locked the door behind him. It's like, oh, okay. So he,
Wait, so the person
the person
that,
who just
so this
killed
was
the other,
another locked room
yeah, it was
situation?
another locked room. Yes.
How, what a way to put a bow on this interview.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I just want to like bow to you and all police officers because I mean it's just so much of what you do is just seeing the worst of how humans can behave and I, I'm making a heart for you
Thank
with
you.
my hands because I'm just like, yeah, that just has to take such a toll on, on the people that are witnessing it day
It
in
does.
and day out, and the people whose neighborhoods it's happening in, and it's
Yep,
just
absolutely.
I just want to send a little heart
Thank
to
you.
everybody. I mean, we can laugh at the antics, but at the end of the day, I'm glad that there are people like you that have been out there, trying to hold people accountable for violence.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And thank you so much for letting me ask you all of these
Oh, sure. It
really
was fun. It was fun.
specific questions about how policing stacks up to crime fiction. Um, yeah, I'm definitely going to make all of my editing clients listen to this
There you
show when
go.
they're working on mysteries and thrillers. I learned so much.
Good.
And I referenced that I did an email series, and I just wanted to say that if you wanted to get that series, which shows how what contemporary crime writers can learn about creating victims and suspects and designing clues and plot twists from Edgar Allan Poe's The Murders in the Rue Morgue, you can get it from my website. I'll give Patrick the link, but it's at loripuma.com/rue dash morgue. So RUE dash MORGUE.
Oh, very good. Lori, this has been a lot of fun today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was very educational.
Well, I'm glad that hour went by really fast, didn't it?
It did.
All right.
All
Well, all right. Well, goodbye, everybody.